everyone. I think we're live now. Hey, welcome to We Are Worship. What am I doing with my phone? I'm like, hey, welcome to We Are Worship Wednesday. For those of you following this from Snapchat, I apologize because clearly I spoke a little too fast in our Snapchat today, and some people might not have been able to understand me, so I'm going to try to speak a little slower. So, welcome to We Are Worship. This is our webinar. First, a few things. If you go to weareworship.com, we have some gifts for you. Yes, we like to share and give gifts here at We Are Worship. So, go and download the free song of the week. It is No More Change.
No more change, guys. We don't have any more change.
No More Chains by Church House. Oh my gosh, that's funny. Featuring Elisa Turner. And then our free hymn of the month is God Most High. Praise Him. By All About Worship featuring Michael Farron. And I've told everybody here that I need a speech class, and nobody has given me one yet, and I'm a little mad about it, because clearly I need some.
I asked her before we went live, I was like, you know the song for this week, the free song? She's like, yeah. And she says, no more change.
I don't know how that happened.
I think she went to the wrong website.
It's the essential oils in my water.
Yeah. Well, today we're really glad to have 4 worship leaders who are really seasoned in ministry and from different backgrounds. So I think we'll get some really good perspectives on this as we talk about worship team auditions, how it works. And I can't guarantee that these guys actually hold auditions because I've never been to one, except for Ben's. I've been to that audition.
Yes, you did.
Part of that audition. So we'll get started by having you guys introduce yourself. I'll start from left to right that we see. Ben, if you want to share just where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Ben Abusada. I'm the worship pastor at Grace Church in Overland Park, Kansas, right outside Kansas City. I lead the worship ministry, both on and off the stage for prayer and all that kind of stuff here at Grace. And we do worship auditions. And you said I'm seasoned. I don't know if that means I'm old.
See, I kind of thought that when Wisdom said that. I was like, some people are going to take that.
I'm going to take that as I'm just wise.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
There you go.
Yes.
Chris.
Hey, I'm Chris Bashley. I'm the creative arts pastor at C4 Church in Ajax, Ontario, which is just outside Toronto, which is Canada. So if you follow me on social media, that's Chris from Canada, is me. And I do auditions here at our church. And actually, I actually wrote an ebook a couple years ago on auditions. So sometimes that's why I get asked into these things, because as soon as you write an ebook, you're an expert.
Awesome. Jamie.
Yeah, Jamie Miley. I'm a worship director at a church called Reverb Church in St. Augustine, Florida. Also CEO for a ministry called Ascension Worship. And we have quite a bit of auditions going in a lot of cities. So glad to be a part of it.
Awesome. And Ryan.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Lochi. I serve at a church called Shelter Cove in Modesto, California, which is about an hour and a half from anything that would be really fun, like San Francisco or Sacramento or all that. We're right smack in the middle. I'm fresh off of auditioning an accordion player about a month ago, so I'm excited to be able to speak into this a little bit today.
Wow. Man, so let's start with you.
That's right.
Tell us about the accordion audition. How did that go?
So we have an open team night about once every quarter at our church. This is something we've been doing for maybe a year or so. Still kind of trying to figure out the format for it, but we use it as the opportunity to bring in new people. And this time we had somebody come in that could play the accordion. So I had probably the initial thought that you have when you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have an accordion player try out for my team. And I just graciously went along with it, and we smiled, and she played for me and just blew me away. She was incredible at accordion. So it quickly went beyond like what am I supposed to, or I'm going to have to just politely ask her to go away. But it turned into, wow, how can I plug in an accordion into our services that are mostly modern? And the answer has been we have a traditional service at our church, and she's gotten plugged into that, both on the piano and then sometimes doing accordion. So it was very much like kind of turned back on to me to figure out how to get her plugged into it. But I think if there was anything to be gleaned from that, my gut reaction, had I known an accordion player was going to come in, I probably would have just politely, said, we don't really have anything that needs an accordion, so we probably wouldn't have auditioned her. But because the Lord kind of set it up to have her walk in with the squeeze box, that was it. So I think just to be open to what's coming is what I learned out of that.
I think I'm gonna walk into your audition with a triangle next time.
Oh, you stole my instrument.
Oh man, that's pretty cool. I think a lot of times with modern worship, we tend to be kind of closed-minded as far as instruments go, and limited very to the
Guitars.
basic standard
Electric guitar. Yeah.
Sure.
instruments. So I'm like really glad to hear how that went, because I think that will encourage some people watching right now. So
Sure.
And if you are watching us live right now, you can actually send us questions through the chat. If you're on the YouTube page, it's at the bottom where you would leave a comment normally. So you can send these guys questions, and if we don't know the answer, we'll send you a free copy of the ebook that Chris wrote, because he's the expert. So maybe Jamie, since you kind of oversee like a network of churches and work with a lot of different churches, what have you seen kind of work really well, whether it's a smaller church setting or a mega church setting?
Yeah, I think I love the topic of auditions. I think it's really important. And I think really when we look at it as leaders, sometimes we maybe want to pass that part of the job off to maybe somebody else. But really that audition is the first chance for us to share the culture of our church. So it's the front door of that person coming and wanting to be involved in our ministry. So it's really the most important time that us as leaders have a chance to pour into that person coming in. So I think it's very important just to have to talk about this with other leaders and to really just share the importance. A big one for me is to have the resources for that musician to come and succeed. No one likes to come to an audition without the resources available for them to feel like they can come prepared. So obviously, we use Planning Center. A lot of churches use Planning Center. If you get anything from this broadcast, is use Planning Center if you're not on that yet. I think everyone could agree with that. But just, for us, we pick a couple songs, a girl song for vocals, a good electric guitar song, a good bass song, good drums, and in Planning Center we just load that in and put all the resources, whether you choose to use worship artistry or some other tutorials, or find some good YouTube tutorials and link that to the song, and make sure you have the right charts. There's nothing more aggravating than a musician showing up and says, well, the chart was this way, and have the right MP3 selected and give them the chance to come prepared. And that's the least as leaders that we could have available for them.
That's cool. You actually use Planning Center for auditions. That's cool.
Yep. So we'll create a separate folder for auditions, and we'll use tags to say maybe for electric guitar and bass, we're going to have Exalted One by Elevation Worship. It's got that little bass line in the intro. It's got a lot of guitar parts. So we'll tag that as electric guitar tutorials, auditions. And then we'll use that, and we'll load that song in, add that new musician to that plan, and send it out.
Awesome.
So that's a great start, I think.
Yeah, and you touched on a great point, is like, why do you even audition? So maybe if the other guys want to chime in on like why you see it as an important thing.
Yeah, when I'm doing them here, I want to evaluate skill, and sometimes when we think auditions, it's just like how good of a musician you are. We have a really foundational belief kind of in our worship ministry here that we want to evaluate hands, we want to evaluate skill, but we also want to evaluate heart and character. And I think everyone who's in ministry and certainly everyone who's leading in ministry understands that like competency is one thing, but that'll take you so far, and character will take you way, way further. And if you build a team that is excelling in both competency and character, and for me that comes out of Psalm 78:72, that God calls David out of the sheepfold to lead Israel, and he shepherds them with an upright heart and guides them with a skillful hand. So we drive that into our teams all the time: upright heart, skillful hand, upright heart, skillful hand. And so when I think of auditions, I think of like that's the draft. Like we're backfilling our teams with people. We want to evaluate heart and hands through that process. So yeah, like what Jamie was saying, using planning centers, set them up to succeed. But then also, I want part of the process to be evaluating character and heart. And I think every church or different churches are going to land in different places. Like, you know, do you need to be a member? Do you need to have gone through certain classes? Some places, whether or not you're a Christian, opens up different roles in your worship ministry. But I want to have an opportunity to evaluate character as part of the audition process as well. So sometimes when we get to the end of the process and we give people an answer, sometimes the answer is based. Sometimes it's a no, not because of musicianship. You're a phenomenal guitar player, but there's some heart things that we want to see some development in first before we bring you onto our teams.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do them kind of similarly in the sense that our goal and my priority with the people that are coming to audition is we want skill, but to Chris's point, our biggest thing, and I always tell our people that are asking or interested in audition is, is this your church home? That's ultimately the goal, is for me to pastor them as a worship leader. Is I want them to find out if this local church is really their church home. That's the priority for me. I always tell people that first, that's my ultimate goal for them, is not for them to get up on stage, even if you can shred and melt faces, I don't care. So, as long as this is your church home and you can grow, because people will see you up there and they're going to instantly think, whether, it doesn't mean we're perfect, but people will think you have it together and you're bought into this local church, that you are standing there in a position of authority speaking on behalf of the church just because you are geographically located 3 or 4 feet higher than they are, right? So we try to create, I try to create that for people and helping them understand that that's the priority. And then I also try to tell people that, it's never no if you can't be on the team. It's usually, not yet. Here are the things that you need to work on, or these are the things I'd need for you to do to be part of the team, whether it's taking a class or whatever the requirements are for the local church. I try to point people that direction first, and then when we audition them for skill and that kind of thing, and I'll have conversations with them individually about that stuff.
Is it true that the other priority is that they watch all Star Wars movies?
I don't know, Wisdom. You sure slipped through.
That's true.
I failed.
Step one.
I failed.
What can I say?
Taking you through it.
Ryan, do you have anything to add?
As far as just like the why behind doing it, yeah, I think same thing you guys touched on. It really comes down to getting a feel for the culture, or really helping people get an understanding of what your culture is like, what your church is like, what your worship ministry is like. Our church has gone through, we've kind of like switched it all around. We have a new executive level position, like an executive creative over all of our media department, our web, our worship leaders and pastors and all that. And so we're really like trying to hone in on culture, and I'm kind of like the chief banner carrier for our audition process and for our musicians specifically, and I'm really trying to figure out, what is it that the people that are on our team really enjoy about being a part of our creative worship ministry, and how can we codify it. I'm saying a lot of weird words. This is all still very much like in my head, trying to figure out how to define what our culture is, and really let people know what it is going to the audition. I mean, I'd love to hear some of your guys' thoughts, if you have any thoughts on how you've gotten that out of your team too. That's really ours, just trying to define what our culture is, and then helping to show the people that audition what that culture would actually be.
The other thing I might add to why is part of the audition process, I think, is to help people discover whether or not worship ministry actually is the place they should be serving. And as a pastor, I want people to be serving in their areas of giftedness, and worship is not a gift. It's not a gift of the Spirit, but there are places where the gifts that you have are going to be better used. And so if without an audition process, or simply like the unwillingness for me to say no and to say like, oh, you play piano? Yeah, sure, come on. When actually, if we went through an audition process, we would discover that your area of giftedness is much better suited to this area of the church or that area of the church. As a pastor, I'm doing a disservice to my church, to the entire body, by placing you in an area without having gone through a process. So then, like, it's outside of just, can you play piano and do you fit the team? And even some of the cultural stuff. But, like, are you serving Jesus out of your area of giftedness so that the body is fully equipped to do the things that God has called us to do? And so as a pastor, immediately, sometimes the pressure gets taken off me in saying no to people, because I don't have to be I don't have to please you because you think you're a great piano player and you should be on our team. I can instead say, like, I'm fairly certain that, like, God has called you to something amazing, and it's not in our worship ministry. And I don't say that to tell you you're a bad person or you can't play. You can play. But it's better for our church if you're over here in this area, because the giftedness that you have for this area is so much better. And the audition process gives a bit of a buffer to do that. And so there's even a pastoral shepherding side to audition. Sometimes we think of audition as just, can you play the song, or do you fit with what we're doing, or can you meet the requirements? To me, it's a pastoral function too. We're shepherding people through the whole thing.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing to mention, is that it's not just getting up on stage and playing an instrument. You're in a role to lead, and sometimes younger kids, maybe even, they're like coming up from youth and they want to be in like the main service worship band, but it's more than just standing on stage and playing an instrument or singing a song.
Yeah. And Morgan's actually never auditioned for a worship team, so she said she has a lot of questions for you guys.
I've honestly, I've never had to audition, and I say had to. I mean,
She's so good that she's never had to audition.
No. I've just been kind of in the position of,
I like that.
We're in need. Can you serve this? Can you help us out? So my thing would be, and I know this is probably different for all of y'all, but what does that audition process look like? And I'm sure, each of you have your own way of going about it, but I'm curious to know what that might look like.
Cool. Who wants to go first? Who goes first?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You guys.
I would. I mean, it starts. Obviously picking the song, getting the resources to that musician. They show up. We spend a little bit of time just kind of hearing about who they are, what they like to do, how long they've been playing, how long they've been in church, just a little bit of a history of kind of who they are. And then kind of once we start the audition, we use multi-tracks. So we basically mute whatever instrument that they're playing. So they play to a full band. So there's no, oh, the drummer was bad, that's why I didn't do good on the bass guitar, So they play to a multi-track, we mute that instrument. During that time, we kind of have an evaluation sheet that we kind of fill out during the whole audition. And at the end, I think for a lot of churches, if some of us have certain levels that these musicians have to be at to play, I think it's real important as a pastor and leaders that we find outlets for these guys that maybe aren't good enough, or maybe we have people within the church that teach music lessons or whatever it is, somehow to not just throw away because maybe they don't play it just right, but have a backup plan to help that person better their craft. I think as a church we could do a lot better, and there's a lot of times I wish I'd have done that better in the years past, but having that backup plan for that musician that maybe isn't good enough, to make them still feel a part of the church, just like what Chris was saying. You know, maybe that's serve on the tech team, serve on the volunteer team. While you do that, we're going to get you some lessons where, you know, we want to get you to a better place. So I think an evaluation sheet is very important to have during that audition process. Also, it helps 6 months from now, John's ready to audition again. You can pull that sheet up and really see how much he has improved in 6 months, which is a huge point.
Our process, people will inquire, and when they do, we'll either do, this sounds terrible, but we might do a cattle call, which is, you know, where it's, you block out 4 or 5 hours and all evening you're auditioning people, or you'll do one-offs with folks who express interest in the worship ministry. So what I'll do is when they express interest, I have them fill out a couple of applications. One is a church-wide general application where they tell their faith story, talk about things, you know, things that they're interested in, and then I'll also do one for whether it's vocal or band. They'll talk about the specifics on, you know, what they sing, what they like to sing, those kinds of questions. And then they fill that out, and they'll bring that to their audition. And in that process, I also ask them the question. We have what a lot of churches might call like a membership class, but we don't technically have church membership. But there's a class that I encourage people to take so they can find out if the church is really the place they want to be. Because I've had it where I've had people join the team, and then a couple months later they're like, well, I don't believe what you guys believe, and I don't even like this place. What are you doing? You know, they don't like what we do ministry-wise. I take care of all that up front if I can, and find out, is this really the culture you want to be a part of? Is this your church home? That's the most important thing, like I said earlier. And then, you know, talk about the requirements, whatever spiritual requirements you may have. And we'll go through the audition. And, man, what was it? Jamie, you said something that I was like, oh, man, that's a good point. I think one thing that I don't do, I don't equip them with Planning Center links or any of that stuff. I tell them, learn these 2 songs. And I try to, you know, based on whatever, if they're volunteering for a vocal or they're auditioning for vocal, I pick a song that really reflects them being able to lead, and then I'll pick a song that really reflects their ability to follow and to do harmonies and that kind of thing. But I don't do, I know what it was. Jamie, you do, like, you try to set up with lessons and talk about investing in people that way. I don't do that yet. I've thought about that and been considering it, and I know in our past, as a church, you know, different churches are in different stages of life, and some things are just really difficult to do. Yep. And that is not something that I feel like we're currently equipped to really follow through and manage with people. Mm-hmm. So what I'll do is I give them the things that I noticed in their playing or singing that they need to really focus on and work on, and then have them come back later. I might give them the name of somebody in our church body that I know is pretty decent at those things. And maybe point them that direction, but I don't commit to doing lessons or anything like that for people or training them. But I do encourage them. Hey, we've got other positions within our worship ministry, technical stuff that we have a need for people. You know, so we kind of manage that way.
That's good.
Yeah.
Ours would be similar. The only thing we would do different from these 2 guys is on the front end, we do video auditions. And so when people inquire they want to do audition, I have a form email that I send to them. They click through to a link, they submit all their info, and then as part of that, we ask them, and we really encourage them, like, this is not high production. Video production has nothing to do with whether or not you're going to pass the audition. So we just say, like, flip open your MacBook, set up your iPhone, like, whatever is easiest, and we really just want to hear you play. And you can play along, like, play the song on your computer, and you play along with it, drums, whatever your instrument is. I just want to get a sense of, like, are you at middle school level, or are you at like a college level? Just where are you in the grand scheme of things? And then all of those people, once they do that video audition, they go into like our database. And for me, there's a couple of things there. One is, like, if they're not willing to do the video audition, we have really high expectations for our musicians. So if you're not willing to go that far, you're not going to survive long on our team. So you got to do that. And the second thing is, I can then take those video links and I can send them to our worship leaders. Because here in our context, our worship leaders are the ones who schedule teams, so I can start to seed their understanding of, like, here's who's in the pool for auditions. And we don't invite everyone who submits a video to a live audition. we make a cut, and part of that is skill level, and part of that is need. Like if we have 12 drummers right now, we don't need a lot of drummers. So if I have 8 drummers who are submitting video auditions, I'm not going to put you through the process because you're not going to be playing very much right now. I'll let you know that. I don't have 12 drummers, so let's not start thinking that. The other thing that we do a bit different here is we do our auditions with a full band. So if you are auditioning on electric guitar, you're going to come on a night when we have a full team, including worship leaders, acoustic, keys, drums, bass, and we set up with in-ears. We run everything on click, so we do our auditions just like we would do our regular thing, and because we're trying to push them really hard. And we want to see how they respond, and we do it with a full team. And then, like I said before, our worship leaders are the ones who schedule the teams, and so at the end of the audition process, I put the decision mostly in their hands, in the hands of the worship leaders. Because if I say yes to someone and I put them in the pool, but our worship leaders are saying like, but I would never schedule that person, then we're wasting everyone's time, and they feel discouraged. And the worship leader doesn't trust me, and the person I've said yes to is ticked off. Like it's just a bad scenario. So ultimately the worship leaders are the ones who make the decision. Now they've been part of the whole process and they understand. I have more of the character interactions. The worship leaders would have more of the skill interactions. But at the end of the day, the worship leaders are the ones who I've given kind of responsibility to give the final answer.
I think for us too, what I've seen when our ministry, I'm just thinking back to like the people that play with us now, the stronger drummers, guitar players, like any of them, they seem to kind of draw themselves to the stage, and I think it has to do if you have a pool of good guitar players and they've got like the cool pedal board and guitarists just geek out on that stuff. Like we get people who come after the service and they're like, wow, how did you do that? And they start looking at the board, and I'll usually keep an ear to the ground for that. And if I see something like that coming and I see somebody I don't know, I'll usually go introduce myself, and 9 times out of 10 they're a pretty decent guitar player if they've taken the step to come over to the stage and look at what's going on, or if the drummers come up or somebody that's come to the church has come to shake the hand of the drummer, they're probably interested in drums, and I found our strongest players have come out of that. And I think that's it for me as a guitarist. I'm not as geeked out on the pedals and stuff as a lot of our other guitarists are, but I can look out at the crowd and I can kind of tell when a guitarist is like looking at the mechanics of what I'm doing rather than just like watching me as a worship leader. And I've had good luck just coming out like, hey, saw you out there. Do you play guitar? And like the
guy like air guitar in the second row.
Yeah, I mean they're not like going like crazy, but there's a certain amount. Like I do. I'm a guitar professor too for a local college here, so I'm kind of used to like the like I could tell when they're like they're trying to figure out what I'm doing. They're not just like watching me, and so that's kind of like before the audition process, and it's almost trying to make sure my facts are right. But pretty much everybody that I've interacted in that way has been a really strong player, because they've identified themselves that way rather than coming to an open audition or something like that.
Yeah, shoulder tapping is always the best, isn't it?
Very cool. We have John that submitted a question in the live chat. He said, seems like you all serve at big churches. We had 3 people at our last audition, all vocals. Advice for growing a team for small local churches. We have a full band, but they play every week.
Yeah, I think, well, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ben.
No, you go ahead, Jamie. You're good, man.
Okay. All right.
So Canadian. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, I think, really just is if the question's more of like, how do I get more people involved? I'm not sure if that's kind of the angle of the question. Like, how do I get more people at an audition? And really, I mean, musicians kind of attract musicians, kind of like what Ryan's saying. So sometimes even pulling back a little bit from what you have every Sunday in order to get kind of a healthy rotation in your organization isn't always a bad thing. And so sometimes maybe even taking a step back doesn't mean it's a defeat. It's kind of just getting things in order to build for the future. So, you know, just really, the more energized your current musicians are, and the more that they're happy to be there serving and playing, you know, that kind of spreads. So sometimes if your musicians are just kind of burned out and have just, you know, haven't had a break, sometimes you just got to pull back a little bit and kind of get the team refreshed a little bit. Sometimes just the environment and energy on stage will bring people to want to be involved what's going on. I'm not real sure where that question was kind of going, but maybe that kind of shines some light on it.
I would say we're not a like big church. We're kind of more like big boned or husky. So church body. So which means, I mean, we kind of came from having to deal with those kinds of issues. And one thing I think that we've done, and Jamie's right. I think portrayal of who you are on stage and generating excitement, and that, you know, people are enjoying being a part of the ministry is huge. I think also, like, communicating the need. I think sometimes as worship leaders, we forget that we actually have to be a part of the church-wide process of encouraging people to participate or asking people. People think just because you've got the same team up there, well, you're taken care of, they don't need me. And you have to sometimes over-communicate and be intentional, even in the midst of your worship service in some way. You know, if you're the person that does a welcome, you say, hey, by the way, we're looking for blah, 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 if your senior pastor will allow that to happen. But one thing you could also consider is creating a night or of something, an event where people who are interested in worship ministry, invite them to check it out in some way that's in a non-threatening environment or non-committal type environment where they can come and learn. Like if you set up once a month, say, hey, this rehearsal, we're going to invite people to come learn about the team. You can come watch rehearsal. You can ask questions, or, you know, you might just create an environment like that. Might be something. We've done that before in the past, long ago, when we were a skinnier church.
The other thing I'd say, John, is just be really careful of expectations, because I think we can see Hillsong, or we can see Elevation, or we can see Gateway, or whatever, and sometimes we, as worship leaders, feel the pressure that now we have to replicate that, or sometimes our pastor or our leaders pressure us to feel like we should be that. And I 1,000% believe whatever the thing is that God has called your church to do, God has given you everything that your church needs to do that. Now, you got to lead in that, and you've got to pray for it, and you've got to equip people to do the work of the ministry. Like, that's the pastoral side. But whatever it is that God has called you to do as a church, you have the people to do that. And if God has called your church to do worship with one team that serves every weekend, 3 vocalists, like, praise God. Praise God you have a whole team and 3 vocalists. And so I would say pastorally, then really pray through, okay, if this is the group of people who, like, in the liturgical function of what we do, we're going to serve our church this way, what's God calling us to do? And it might grow, but it might not. And there might be more people, or there might not be. But I would say just be really careful of expectations, because, I mean, I can tell you, yes, I'm at a bigger church, but I can name 100 churches that are bigger than mine, and we've just tried to say, like, man, we feel like God has called us to do some particular things in our worship ministry, and so we're going for it. Like, we really believe, we have big dreams for our church and for our worship ministry that we think God has inspired, and so, like, we're going after it, because we really believe the things that God is inspiring us to do, He's going to provide everything that we need. And I have the gift of faith, so I can say that that's my gift area, which gets me in trouble sometimes because I'm just like pressing on. But I like that too. Like, I see what some of these churches are doing, and it's like, man, like, I feel like we're just getting started. And in some ways we are. Like, we're just getting started. Yeah. And so at least we're moving forward, and we're doing the things that God's calling us to do, and we're equipping people in our church, and we're encouraging our church to worship and to really believe the things that God's called to do. So whether your church is 30 people or 30,000, I think the principle stays the same. Just watch expectations, believe, you know, what God has called you to do. He's equipped your church to do it.
Yeah. I think my encouragement for a small church too would be In as much as you can as the leader, try to actually learn some other instruments too. I got my feet thrown on the fire that when I started, I'd have to hop on drums sometimes, and I was absolutely terrible at it. But 2 weeks ago, I played drums for our main services, and I didn't get fired. So I've had progress in that. But I say all that to say
that's a very attainable goal.
Right.
Don't think that.
But what I've seen, especially back then, if I only had like 3 people, you come up and you're like, okay, I got a keys player, I have a guy who can kind of play the cajon, I have this other person over here who wants to sing, maybe I can hop on the guitar, maybe I can hop on this position or that position, and it allows me in a smaller context to fill the gap and still utilize somebody who's not going to be able to like jump on whatever, but I can plug them in where they need to. I think that'd be my encouragement if you have a small team and just a few people trying out. Maybe work a little bit on doing the rest of it. Like get some keys down, get some guitar down. Bass is, if you're a guitar player, bass is pretty much like a understanding that you can do that too. But move yourself out of the way so you can let some of these new people get in there, and I think that can help like foster it without having to bench somebody just because you only have the one skill set.
That's good.
Man, this is really good stuff. Unfortunately, we are out of time already. So thank you guys so much for sharing. You guys have some really good stuff to share with us, and I think it would be really helpful for anybody watching or listening. And next week, I actually accidentally said last week that I wouldn't be here this week, but it's actually next week I won't be here. I'll be out of town, so Morgan will be holding it down by herself. So can you tell us what's going on next week?
Yeah, so next week we'll have Craig Dunnigan here from Gateway Worship down in Texas, and he is talking about taking it to the streets. And what he means by that is songwriting and worship writing in your church and how you get those church songs out. So I'm excited to talk to him about that because it's publishing related, and that's my thing. That's my jam. I love that. So be sure to tune in, same time, same place. And check out weareworshipwednesday.com, and that'll have all the info on there, and it'll send you the link to watch the webinar.
Yeah. Thanks again, guys.
Cool.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Thank
See
you.
you guys.
Thanks, Wisdom. Thanks, Morgan.
See ya.
See ya.